Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Paddock Pass podcast and our review show of the Dutch TT, the 10th round of 2025 MotoGP. For those watching on YouTube, can probably see our very nice background. That grandstand behind us was absolutely full earlier on today. David Emmett, it was a healthy attendance for the 100th year of racing at this fantastic facility.
A record attendance. A record weekend attendance, Dave.
Yes, it was a record weekend attendance, but let's not touch on that subject now. There were 109,499 people turned up, which is as near to a sellout crowd as you can get. I think the maximum attendance, I'm not sure if it's 109,500 or 110,000, but it was just rammed. It was absolutely rammed, and it was very busy yesterday as well. 52,000, and it was just a fantastic occasion.
And esteemed colleague and friend Neil Morrison, it's a pleasure to see you armed with a microphone once again. After your brief absence yesterday on our Paddock Note show. Just a reminder, people, if you join us on the patreon.com/Paddock Pass podcast, you can get lots of extra content that we've been producing throughout the weekend here in the Netherlands. And Neil, what was, apart from avoiding the sunshine today, fantastic weather this weekend for this Grand Prix, what was your moment?
Well, it is nice to be back on the show. Thank you for letting me back on, because I thought I had been outcasted permanently. I woke this morning to a slew of messages online saying slacker, and it was like one of those witch hunts that you get on social media from time to time. I thought I'd been cancelled and would not be allowed to show my face around here again, but thank you, gentlemen, for re-inviting me back onto the show. My moment, Adam, of this Grand Prix happened right at the start of the Grand Prix, actually. It was Marc Marquez's big crash down at the Ramshoek on Friday morning, and I was down in pit lane at the time. Everyone kind of stopped doing what they were doing to watch replays of what had happened to Marc on track. The way that he was moving was so ginger. The way he went back to his truck to get changed rather than going straight back into the box. It's funny how
that was the one where he took his glove off.
Yeah,
right,
exactly. Yeah, took his glove off immediately and looked like he was in real discomfort. Actually, what had happened is he hit his funny bone and his hand had gone kind of numb, which was obviously pretty worrying. But that came back soon enough. And it's funny how gossip spreads around pit lane. Everyone was sort of saying, "Oh, did you see Marc's crash? It's a bad one." The fact that he's not back in the box yet, I mean, this could be a couple of races out.
Championship's over.
And sure enough, within a couple of minutes, he was back in his box. He went out to top the session, and then, considering he went on to take 37 points from a possible 37. It was another kind of incredible hurdle that he overcame. In a position of strength now that we haven't seen since 2019.
Yeah, ironic really that the weekend started off with us all thinking that Marc Marquez might have broken his left hand, and it ended with Alex Marquez having broken a bone in his left hand, a second metacarpal, which is basically this bone here in your index finger, actually in the hand, not in the finger itself.
That's actually my moment of the weekend, Dave. Not the breakage. Full sympathy to Alex Marquez for that, because it was a scary-looking crash, and you could argue that just fracturing his left finger, or that the first finger, is pretty light. But he did go straight back to Madrid for surgery, and that's what we were informed by the team. And it remains to be seen how complex that operation is going to be, exactly what the repair job is, and what sort of shape he's going to be in for Sachsenring, where he's going to have to be turning quite a lot to the left. Yeah. So it would be handy to have a fully working hand for that one.
If you think about it, breaking a metacarpal is what Jorge Martin did. We should be talking about him later on, but it's what Jorge Martin did in that crash at the Sepang test. He broke two bones in his broke two metacarpals, and he was looking to be ready sort of 3 weeks later. So I think it might be a bit tough for Alex to ride at the Sachsenring, but probably not impossible.
Yeah, that was my moment, because it came on lap 6, right after a tasty batch of to and fro, I guess you could say, with Pedro Acosta. Acosta, kind of changing his race strategy a little bit. He said he needed to be more proactive in the first laps, and then we saw it. And I just thought it was a moment of high drama, pretty much like Neil's moment regarding Marc. And, it could have a swing in the championship, potentially. Alex also crashed on Friday this weekend, managed to get away with it. But it was the shock factor, it was the implications, and it also led to Marc giving some quite choice comments after the Grand Prix about the dynamic of their relationship as brothers, and also just the general kind of landscape of the championship at the moment. So, yeah, that was what kind of stood out for me, I guess.
Yeah,
what about you, Dave?
I mean, also because Mark now has 68 points because of Alex's crash. It was a really strange crash. It looked like the front locked. And it looked like, even though we've got these brake guards which are supposed to do it, but it looked like his front brake locked underneath one of the wings or the aero or the fairing or something like that, and it was just enough to lock the front and to send Alex going. My moment is the end of the whole event, when Mark was there. He set up the fireworks. There were fireworks all around the track, really. And I just think it was an absolutely fantastic. It was a fitting end to a fantastic event. It was. I mean, I came here. I mean, I'm not much of a one for celebrations.
Yeah, how twee. How
cute. Yeah, exactly. No, so I was sort of like thinking, oh God, yeah, whatever suit. But I did genuinely feel that they did a really good job of marking this celebrations. 3:15, we had all of those celebration laps with all with all of the old bikes from from sort of like from 1949 and earlier onwards. Lots of stuff. There was an AJS Porcupine. There was Norton's. There was Suzuki RG500s. There was Yamaha OW01 YZR 500s. There was just loads and loads of different bikes. There was a bit of everything. And so, yeah, I mean, it capped what I think has been just a really, really fantastic event and a proper celebration. It felt like also the trophies had all of the circuits, which all of the different track layouts of the circuits since 1925, and I thought that was a really nice touch as well. I think they celebrated it really, really well.
Did the 6-year-old write your moment, Dave? I liked it when the fireworks went off. It's a little bit basic of you, not quite the niche choice that I was expecting, but yeah, I respect it. And it was particularly arousing. What's the word? It filled me with energy to see you sing the national anthem with great gusto just before the MotoGP race as well.
Did you get your favourite ice cream later as well?
Saving up for that.
No, but it was a great point. I fully agree on the retro bikes, and the occasion was marked. And I think MotoGP, as I tweeted, needs to be doing more of that stuff to celebrate its history and its heritage. Coming up on the podcast, we're going to be going over a few of the major talking points from this Grand Prix, some of the observations we had, some of the comments that we've heard. We also have questions in from our Patreon listeners, so we'll be going through some of those tied to those subjects. And we were replacing our hire and fire categories this week with bless and banish, keeping up the holy theme of the place that we're in. That's
say
as
it.
much. No, I'm not going to say it.
Its name.
No.
Is it because we're in the cathedral, Adam?
Yes, and we have our grades as well, so we'll be finishing off the podcast with that. But first of all, let's talk about it's impossible to escape Marc Marquez. I mean, I was sort of chided a little bit, I think, on our sort of Patreon platform for saying that there is no championship narrative in 2025. But of course, Marc is leading the narrative, and this was the 6th Grand Prix from 10 where he's gone 1-1, to use a motocross term. He's taken the Sunday win, he's taken the Saturday win. The lead now in the championship is, I think, over 60 points.
68 points.
Yeah, that's no small amount.
127, I think, over Pecco. I mean, Pecco already needs help. Pecco needed help to win, starting from Mugello. Now he really is starting to need help. But Alex needs an average of 5.7 points per. He needs to gain 5.7 points per weekend on Marc Marquez. Marc Marquez is in pretty good shape. So how you do that is really, really tough. I mean, I won't say the championship's over, but the championship is over.
It's not even half. We're not even halfway through.
We're not even halfway through. But it's really hard to see how anyone beats Marc now.
Well, I mean, as Neil pointed out in his moment, the weekend started on, in a shaky way for Marc Marquez because he decided to explore the exact size of the gravel here in TT Circuit Assen and had a few sort of choice comments for it. But goodness, it's he turned it around again. if we evaluate some of his race performances, Neil, then he explained for the second day in a row that he just really maximised his stronger points, which were braking into certain sections of this course, where he did an admirable job in defence, and that was like holding, the inside line on some of the tighter sections.
Yeah, I think this was probably his best performance of the year, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's had some fantastic ones, obviously, so far, the kind of dominance that he's shown. But there were so many points on the track. Well, there were quite a few that it was really obvious that he was not the fastest rider through there. We saw it so obviously in the sprint through turns 10, 11, 12. Those kind of slow, well, they start slow and then they gradually increase in speed. Those right-handers that lead on to the kind of semi-back straight here. He was notably struggling through there. But I liked his kind of explanation after the sprint on Saturday when he held Alex behind him, where he just said, I said to the team, just, give me a bike that works well on the brakes. And from that, I'll be able to overtake when I need. I can defend when I need, and I'll be able to do the rest. It was just like quite impressive to see him doing that. It reminded me a little bit of like when Rossi won in the Sachsenring in 2006. He basically had told Jerry Burgess, like, give me a bike that I can overtake into turn 12, that downhill left-hander after the waterfall, and I'll make the rest work basically. And Rossi sort of came from 11th on the grid to win that race. And what Marc did today, I found kind of similar, because there's so many points in the race where either Alex Marquez in the sprint or Bezzecchi in the main race were really putting them under pressure. We're within 0.2 of a second. It just needed one mistake to let those guys in, and at no point really did you see Marc make any kind of mistake. He was pretty much perfect from the start to the finish at a track that he admits doesn't play into his main strengths.
It's a good point about getting the bike right, because I remember interviewing Jerry Burgess a long time ago about the race against Casey Stoner in 2008 at Laguna Seca, and like they knew that basically Rossi had to be in front of Stoner. If he was ever behind Stoner, he was going to lose. So they set everything around staying in front. And I asked Marc about this in the press conference. He said basically, we haven't really touched the bike. This is more or less the same bike as Mugello, but what it does is a bike that plays to his strengths. It allows him to brake really, really, really late. Obviously, and that is exactly how he defended. If you're going to pass here, what you need to be is be close through turn 15, the Ramshoek, and then dive underneath on the brakes going into the chicane. But the point was, no one was ever close enough there. Where they were close was, turn 10, 11, which you can't really pass there. You can pass into turn 12, but you have to be incredibly brave and you have to get it absolutely perfect. And no one was really quite fast enough, really quite had enough speed to actually dive. And the other thing, if you're going to have a criticism of either Alex Marquez or Marco Bezzecchi, the only place that they really could have had a shot was at the Sturban at the hairpin, which is literally just a physical thing where you just dive up the inside, just use the other rider as a berm, move them aside, get them out of the way, and then try to literally just intimidate them into staying behind. Marc isn't easily intimidated, so I don't know whether it would have worked, but that would have been pretty much the only chance they had.
Yeah, Alex Marquez tried to do that to Acosta, and it didn't work out so well for him.
It didn't work out. This is a very good point, Neil.
Yeah, it was interesting what Bezzecchi was saying. Every time he kind of got that slingshot out of Moivenmeer, am I saying it right?
Mavenmere, yes, go on.
Almost. Down into Hogaharde, he said that he would just catch the slipstream of Marc's bike, and it would kind of unsettle him a little bit, and he would have to just like ease off ever so slightly through the Ramshoek, and that was just enough to give Marc a little bit of an edge going into the GT chicane. But pretty much every lap there, Marc was just completely nailing the chicane and was taking sometimes 2-3 tenths out of Bezzecchi just in that corner alone. And for him to do that, 26 times over the full race distance without any mistake in there, it was just, it was metronomic kind of consistency.
Yeah, it was, because he did it 26 times today and he'd done it another 13 times yesterday. He was just absolutely perfect through that section every single time. And that is really impressive.
Two things. He said in Mugello he's in his best moment. How much is Marc really pushing? Do we think he's hovering right near the edge? As he was kind of towards the end of his Honda years?
No.
Or, is he kind of do we still feel he has a gear? I mean, if Bezzecchi had made a lunge or Alex Marquez had made an attempt on Saturday,
or if Jorge Martin had been here and had a
that's even more fantastical now. But could Marquez even crank things up even more? Because if we have a quick superficial look at him, I mean, the combination of shape, confidence, experience, racecraft, improvisation, everything that he's applying to this championship, we know this is kind of obvious. The only person that's going to beat him is himself.
Yes.
The only time he does fall off, injure himself, or just make a miscalculation, as we saw in Qatar.
Yeah, I mean, I got the impression that he was riding pretty much close to his limit here this weekend. There's obviously been races in the past this year where it hasn't really appeared that way, but I kind of thought, even just watching from the TV, like he was really on the ragged edge in some parts of the track just to try and keep Bezzecchi behind him, which I felt made it all the more impressive. And he said afterwards, the three most important wins for him this year were Qatar, Mugello, and Assen, where he scored 37 points in each weekend. Tracks where he's had issues in the past. He hasn't won, in Qatar he hadn't won since 2014. Mugello, I think, was the same. Assen, he hadn't won since 2018. So, he's kind of almost taking greater motivation from the places where he expects to be a little bit weaker. Was saying all weekend that he was expecting to defend. And, once again, like we said in last week's show, it didn't really prove to be the case.
Also, I asked him a little bit about Sachsenring in the press conference, and he blew it in the Circuit of the Americas. And he said last year with the Gresini, the GP23, he also crashed, fractured a rib and a finger. Still managed to finish on the podium, such as his kind of authority at that circuit. But there is the chance again that Marc could twist things around and sort of like throw things off by not getting a result at Sachsenring.
But I think that, I think Neil is spot on about the condition that he's in. I think he's at his absolute peak. He's like a cyclist in a lot of ways. I mean, he's like Eddie Merckx. I keep on comparing him to Eddie Merckx because Eddie Merckx was the cannibal that wanted to win everything. Cyclists tend to be at their best between sort of 30 and 35. Generally, MotoGP racers tend to be at their best between 25 and 30 because they have the maturity in the racecraft, and that's when they really start to win a lot. I think Marc has those 4 years that he missed with Honda. He's really, really focused on just performing, doing everything right, trying to be as perfect as possible. You see it in the fact that he's lost, 3 or 4 kilos, whatever it might be. You can see it in his race. He's really, really, in his face, he's really, really thin. He's really he's completely focused. He's trying to be as perfect as possible. I think those mistakes at Jerez and at Kota were really hard reminders that it isn't easy and that you can make mistakes and that you can go wrong. And I think he keeps those, he folds those away in the back of his mind to remind himself that when he turns up at the Ring expecting to win, he can't do that because that way he gets led down this road of making a mistake and potentially losing a lot of points.
And he said since Silverstone, he's just been a little bit wary of those opening laps. He knows that that's probably the kind of most precarious point of the race when, there's extra grip in the rear tire. It's going to be pushing the front a little bit. We saw the crashes at Jerez at Silverstone. He knows he just needs to be careful there. And he said today, the start of the race wasn't my strongest moment. We had, 5 or 6 guys lined up behind him in the early laps, but he was still able to control it. And then he has that knowledge that once the tires start to wear, that's kind of his territory and no one's really catching him. And it was just, in a way it was slightly demoralising to see him pull clear of Bezzecchi in those final couple of laps, but there was just something quite awesome about it as well, where you just had to say, fair play.
Yeah, absolutely. He really is in his best moment. It's just great to watch. One other small subject related to this before we move on. Alex Ragsdale sent us a question saying, did Marc put the whole Alex is my protector thing to bed with his performance today? And the reason we have to talk about this, the saying familiarity breeds contempt comes to mind. Alex has finished second to Marc 8 times in sprints this year, including this
9
weekend.
times.
Is it 9 times?
Yeah.
So, you do think, goodness, is the guy ever really going to get a shot? Is he going to be able to do it? And he came so close on Saturday to doing it. And it led to questions or some more speculation afterwards that he's not really trying as hard as he potentially could. This kind of riled Marc to make some post-race comments today, as if to say, you need to respect the MotoGP riders. Everybody on this grid wants to win, but only one person can. what do we think? Because Dave, I think we were all of a similar opinion on Saturday. It was like, go on, give it, have a go.
Yeah.
Just launch it, roll in a little bit hotter, try and park him, make a block pass, anything. But I guess we're just armchair experts, and
obviously we're armchair experts. I do think that because he beat Marco Bezzecchi in exactly the same way that he beat Alex Marquez, but I also think the point still stands that I said that I made on Saturday, which is that Alex Marquez and to an extent also Marco Bezzecchi lacked the imagination. They didn't have a plan B. They couldn't come up with a plan B or a plan C, to try somewhere else. They didn't try and jam him in the stirrup and in the hairpin. They didn't try, because what Mark would do, what Valentino Rossi did in the past, what Casey Stoner did on the past, was pass you in a place where you weren't expecting it, and that will upset you. It will sort of confuse you. It'll give you pause for a fraction of a second. That's what Alex didn't do. That's what Marco didn't do.
But I think
it's just because he's a better rider than in the end, when it comes down to it, the 6-time world champion or 8-time world champion is who today equals the record of Giacomo Agostini for Premier Class victories. Is a better motorcycle racer than Alex Marquez or Marco Bezzecchi or anyone else, really.
Yeah, and the places where both Alex in the sprint and Marco were in the feature race were closest to Mark, where, as I said, coming out of Moivenmere and into Hogeheide. I mean, it's easy for us to say, just stick it in the inside going into Hogeheide and through the Ramshoek. But 130, 140 miles an hour, it's a little bit different, and that is a point in the track where you really do have to take care. It's not like it's just some first gear corner where the consequences of something going wrong are zero.
If you know the track really, really well, if you really trust yourself, if you know exactly what you've got, you can get, like I say, through Mavenmere, turn 12, you can do it. John Kaczynski has done it, and Michael van der Mark has done it in World Superbikes, where you get the run through 10 and 11, and you use that as like a launch pad to go past, and you literally stick it where
the sun don't shine.
Yeah, exactly. you stick it somewhere where they can't react, they can't do anything. It's not dangerous, but it's not very nice.
Who was the sort of the superior one across practice? But Pecco was showing some very promising times on very used, I think, front tires on Friday afternoon. The sprint, you kind of just have to take it now as a given that Pecco was going to have a crap sprint and underwhelming time. And there were moments in the race where he did look like race-winning potential, or he was showing that. But ultimately, he just, when he's behind people, there's just a kind of moment in the race where the front isn't feeling as he wants. There's too much movement there, and we don't see the best from him.
Yeah, he's just not able to use his braking, which he's been saying since the start of the year. Just copy, paste, repeat, as you said, Neil. But Dave, Tara says, I'm curious to know how big a step today was for Pecco. I mean, was it a little bit of a pigeon step, or
no? I mean, I would slightly disagree with Neil in that you can't go back and copy paste Mugello. What you would say is you would take Mugello as a basis and you would add a little bit on. I think it wasn't a small step. It absolutely wasn't a massive step, but it was a step because he was still strong later in the race. He had really good pace, really almost up until sort of like the last 4 or 5 laps. Whereas in Mugello, he had decent pace for the first 10 laps and then it was gone. So it feels like they are making progress, but the progress is slow and they're still looking for this sort of this feeling that he wants. He wants to be able to manage the brake deep into the corner, so he can get the bike stopped much later than he's able to. Understand when the front is going to lock, and then sort of and release it when he wants to turn. At the moment, he's having to ease off or release a little bit when he's feeling it, the front locking, and he's not able to manage that.
Third on the podium was Marco Bezzecchi.
Second,
goodness, yes. Why do I want to say third?
Third
on Saturday. Thank you very much, Neil. It's been a long weekend. British Grand Prix winner, of course, but Bezzecchi's achievement, I mean, we know he goes well in Assen. Correct me if I'm wrong, which I probably am. First pole position, maybe in MotoGP, was at this circuit. Or we took a sprint victory in 2023. So Bezzecchi, has good form here, just like Aprilia have good form at Silverstone, where he was able to take that win. Okay, it was fortuitous with Yamaha and Fabio Quartararo's situation, but Bezzecchi's fine ride and double podium haul day was also kind of, not, I don't want to say overshadowed, but maybe slightly obfuscated by the situation with Jorge Martin, which has kind of lit up a little bit more. I'm sure people have already seen the mess on social media with various comments. Even Dorna CEO Carmelo Espeleta waxing lyrical about the solidity of contracts in the paddock and where Dorna are going to fall.
In itself is a hilarious comment.
Well, on which side Dorna fall, which I thought, maybe he felt, I've read enough of this bullshit on the internet. I want to weigh in with my view. And I think it's quite a worthy thing that Carmelo can come out and say something like that. Yeah. But then, of course, Massimo Rubola spoke to us as well, gave us a bit of a media debrief. Neil, can you just very quickly give a summary of what we heard and what's going on?
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, that kind of re-exploded into life again this weekend, the sort of Martin-Aprilia dispute. And it went from a dispute to a war, I think, with what... Albert Valera said on MotoGP Live on Saturday morning. Then Rivola came into the press conference today. Sorry, not into the press room today to say basically like, essentially we've got two options. We can sit down and find an agreement, or we can take this to court. But his stance was that Aprilia still very much wants to keep Jorge Martin, and
really?
Or wisely or not, still seems to think that there is a way of changing this whole situation around to a point where Jorge Martin can remain at Aprilia and be happy to remain at Aprilia. I mean, he did use the slightly bizarre example of last year, how Martin won the World Championship despite having a bit of a grudge against the manufacturer he was with and the bosses of the manufacturer that he was with, and that sort of brought out the kind of best of him. So, I mean, it's a strange strategy, but that was what Rivilla said.
It's too far gone, isn't it, Dave? I mean, we've gone beyond the point where certainly in terms of PR.
I mean, it's a complete mess. It's a complete mess in the sense. I mean, what we know is that Aprilia, or Jorge Martin and Albert Valera put a clause in in Jorge Martin's contract with Aprilia that if he wasn't in a particular position by a particular point in the championship, then he would be allowed to get out of the second part of his the second year of his contract. Now, according to Albert Valera, Martin's manager, though that clause has been met, the conditions for that clause have been met, and he's informed Aprilia of his decision that Martin wants to leave, unless they are given a different, unless they can come away, agree a different measure by which to sort of measure the performance of Martin and the competitiveness of the bike. I think we saw this weekend again. Aprilia bought an aero update. They changed there are wings on the side of the seat, and they changed those from pointing down to pointing up. Savadori rode with them on Saturday and said this is a big improvement. Bezzecchi had a really good race on Saturday. He rode with them on Sunday and had an even better race. So it seems to work. It seems to help. It gives braking stability. The bike is really competitive around tracks like this, fast and flowing tracks. So I think that. I mean, I don't understand. I was team Jorge Martin. I was, all up the workers. But at the moment, I can't really see why Martin wants to leave. Because the other thing is that all the talk is that he'd go to Honda. Why would you go to Honda? It's definitely a worse bike. And
Vijay actually sent us that question. He said, "What does Martin see in the Honda that he doesn't see in the Aprilia? It's not like he's getting back on a Ducati."
No, exactly.
It might be green, rectangular, and something you can put in your pocket. I'm not sure. But I mean...
What, a bar of soap?
Quite possibly, yeah.
He's going to be able to afford to stay in really expensive hotels where they have really classy little green bars of soap.
It's all digital now, Neil. It's electronic money.
Of course. I mean, from what I can gather, Valera came to Assen this weekend to try and put his point across that Martin is absolutely intent on leaving again, to try and say, look, we feel there's a situation where he can leave. he wants to leave. So let's just get this resolved and done and dusted ASAP. And what he really did was just got Aprilia's backs up even further, it seems. And Aprilia have said, well, we're just going to make this as difficult as possible for you. And you kind of question the wisdom of maybe Valera in this instance and Martin as well, because I'm not sure that they've judged this completely right. There is clearly a clause, and they feel that they're right. I think they feel that, they've obviously gone out on a limb to kind of execute this clause. But, I mean, Aprilia, just from their words, seem pretty confident that if it does go to court, that they can sort of hang it to Martin. They've got a situation now where Carmelo Espeleta, the CEO of Dorna, is getting involved and saying, like, look, if this isn't resolved, we have the right to kind of not validate his entry for next year. So it's clear that he wants it to be resolved in Aprilia's favour. So, I mean, the worst case scenario for Martin would be that he claims he can leave Aprilia. He refuses to ride for Aprilia, signs with another factory, and Dorna say, well, we're not going to accept your entry. You can go and ride in the CEV instead.
I do wonder if Dorna would HRC touch him if he's mired in legal disputes. No. I think that would be a big no-no for the Japanese.
Yeah, there needs to be a clean break. Yeah.
But then also, Neil, I mean, this is kind of reminds me of a football scenario where a player doesn't want to stay with a team. Aprilia could feel well within their rights to make things difficult for him. But I'm wonder why Martin is so intent on getting out of that operation or getting off that motorcycle, especially in the context of Bezzecchi delivering the results in his first season, not even half a season on it. Yeah. I mean, it seems as though Jorge's feels like he's been slighted by the fact Valera's been keen to point out that they wanted to extend this kind of stay of execution or this clause to 6 races when Jorge had been on the bike, and that was sort of rejected out of hand, and that was the moment that he said no. Yeah, but fucking hell, he felt slighted last year, feels slighted this year.
He does have a chip on his shoulder.
But he's always had that.
But I also think, I said this on the night show as well, you really start to think that he thinks the bike is cursed, because every time he gets near that bike, he hurts himself really very badly. Now, it's not the Aprilia's fault necessarily. In fact, it's not really the Aprilia's fault at all. So far, all of the mistakes have been his own. You could possibly say the first one at the Sepang test, you might be able to put it down to the bike, but again, like going out on those tyres in those conditions and opening the throttle too hard. But yeah, he just seems to see, because he's come off of this amazing season where he becomes world champion. He moves to Aprilia and immediately he starts banging himself up. And every time he gets on the bike, then he comes away with an even worse injury. So I can sort of imagine that he just thinks the whole project is cursed. I don't want to be anywhere near it. I don't care how competitive it is. I'll go somewhere else.
Maybe he just needs some nice fireworks.
He, if it had been here, he would have really enjoyed the fireworks, and it would have changed his mind.
Dasher says, "Why is it a given that Jorge would even be doing better than Bez on the Aprilia?" But then
because he was better than Bez on the Ducati, that's why.
But can we actually talk about Bez? I mean, we're at an advanced stage of this podcast, and we haven't spoken about his performance
today.
We
said, that he's been doing all right. I mean, what else
okay, yeah. Well, let's leave it at that. Yeah, we've really gone in depth on Marco Bezzecchi's performance this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, look, yes, Bez he did ride just an outstanding race because he really did take the fight to Marc Marquez. Was his race better than Alex Marquez's yesterday?
Exactly. Yeah. No.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
I would argue no.
I would argue yes.
Because sprint is a 13-lap all balls out qualifier, whereas you can be a little bit more measured in a 26-lap race.
Yeah, so it's more difficult to stay that close after 26 laps.
Yeah. Plus, he said he was risking it all race. He said there wasn't one point in the race where he was saving his tires. It was pretty much all in. And he wasn't quite close enough to make a move on Marc, but he did keep him pretty honest in what is Marc's kind of purpleless patch of the last 7 or 8 years.
And there was that massive slide through Merenmeer, which again is 220, 230 Ks. Yeah. I don't know what that is in old money, but a lot, very fast. You do not want to be sliding both tyres through there that way. So,
and it's his first double podium since the San Marino Grand Prix of 2023, which is a massive kind of, we haven't seen this kind of Bezzecchi for, a year and a half.
And it's an Aprilia RSG MotoGP and not a Ducati GP24.
So
And
you've deferred your affections from Johann Zarco to Maverick Vinales, and now you're in the Bez fan club.
He's a right little tart, is Arnie.
Yeah, I know. Just so fickle.
tell our listeners something they didn't know.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about Bez now?
No, just that. I just think he was deserving of.
He got the rider of the day from the watching public.
He did, and I think he got the rider of the day in the Paddock Pass podcast. The rider of the GP poll, more so than the Marc Marquez. It was very, very tight when I last looked, just before we came on to record. But I think he got about 44% of the vote, and I mean, it was a splendid ride, and I have to say, I didn't really expect to see Bezzecchi putting these kind of performances in this early into his apprenticeship at Aprilia. Yeah,
you're nailed on. Like I said at the top of the segment, it's just a shame for him that the like in Silverstone, the narrative for his success was sort of clouded a little bit by his absent teammate. But yes.
Or maybe it was a consequence of it because
Dave, you're getting very deep now. Psychology.
Exactly.
Well, TV Room Raccoon, one of our dear patrons, has noted that every single time this Martin situation is blown up, Bezzecchi has gone on to put it on the podium.
Yeah.
All right, goodness, what else can we do? Maybe conjure some other stuff. Maybe there's some sort of PR plants in the press room that could, ruffle some more. I don't know, MotoGP storylines.
Yeah, we'll be renting out our Patreon supporters to various teams for for results.
Well, can we move on to a few other subjects? Is that all right? I want to ask you a very quick question. Is Assen getting too dangerous?
No.
Moto3 was pretty graphic.
Yeah, but that's Moto3. It's exactly the same as it's exactly the same at Mugello. It's exactly the same at any track where you can do a lot of slipstreaming and stay close together. It's a consequence of the class. It's not a consequence of the circuit. Assen is a dangerous circuit because it's high speed. In the same way that Phillip Island is a dangerous circuit. In the same way that Mugello is a dangerous circuit. Now, if you go to somewhere really, really slow, if you slow everyone down to 30 kilometers an hour, no one's going to get hurt. But that's not really what MotoGP is about.
Stuart Edwards sent us a question asking how Luca Lanetta is. I mean, that kind of impact going through the GT chicane was, it was tough, wasn't it? The only thing was, I think you can see from the helicopter angle, the overhead perspective, that he was kind of writhing in agony. He wasn't unconscious. Didn't seem to be anything overly serious, and even though they had to stretch him away. Has there been any update, guys, on how he is?
Yeah, he was taken to Groningen Hospital, and I think he's been diagnosed with a leg fracture. So I think he was pretty lucky because it looked as though he took a decent impact from Furasato just behind him in the sort of abdomen. But it seems as though the leg injury is what's going to keep him out. So in a way, he was lucky.
I'm just being provocative because I think the sight of MotoGP bikes, Assen, is fantastic.
Yep.
I mean, it's really, really special, but I do wonder if sometimes it just looks so sketchy.
Yeah, I mean, it is like here. I mean, it is like Mugello, where you are on the edge of your seat at certain points where the bikes are absolutely on the limit. But I think that's also, you want to see MotoGP bikes going around a place like this, being stretched to their limits, and you certainly get more of a kind of a sense of what this sport is about here than a slower track like, I don't know, Valencia.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, where would you rather watch a MotoGP bike, at Assen or at Valencia?
Yeah, good point. More things. P4 Pedro Acosta. Good race. We didn't get a chance to speak to him because apparently he was stung by a wasp, had an allergic reaction to it, so had to go to hospital as well. Was released very quickly, so nothing serious there. Of course, we didn't get to speak to Alex Marquez either, who had sort of made his way back to Spain. But Acosta P4, I think for maybe the second or third time this season, best result. Maverick Vinales in fifth as well. So 2 RC16s. The KTM's getting better, not quite good enough to really sort of invade the podium. But
just
Acosta,
one thing,
I think that was his best race of the year.
Yeah,
I think so.
KTM are now in concessions category C. They've now got enough points. I think they needed 289. They've got 290. Aprilia are only a few points away from it. So the two bikes, they will be staying. I mean, this is the mid-season checkpoint, not the end of the season checkpoint, but it would have had consequences for testing. The bikes definitely appear to have some kind of a performance.
Yeah, I thought this was a brilliant performance from Pedro. There wasn't a great deal of indication from the rest of the weekend that he would be up there fighting in that lead group. And he was there for the majority of the race. It was only in the last 4 or 5 laps that he really, or maybe a little more, but probably around the 20 lap mark, that was when he dropped off the back of Bagnaia. And up until then, he was really in the hunt for the podium throughout. I mean, this has never been a great track for Pedro. He missed, I think, part of the GP in 21 the first time he was here when he was run over in Moto3, and then he missed 22 because he had that leg injury from motocross accident. Last year was one of the kind of tougher venues on his MotoGP apprenticeship. I think he crashed out right at the end of the 24 race here, and I felt that it was going to be a kind of a similar story here on Sunday, but he was right up for the fight, got a great start, was right in the mix and made some really nice passes into Distrubin, aggressive but clean. And even that bit where he kind of leaned on Alex Marquez just before Alex crashed, I mean, it was on the edge, but it was the kind of aggressiveness that you sort of expect of Acosta. And it kind of went in line with maybe a slight change in attitude this weekend. I mean, we were sort of taking the piss a little bit back at Mugello about, how mardy is he going to be when he comes to see us, how crumpled is his expression going to be. But it was as if he was not on a charm offensive, but in a slightly, it seemed he was determined to be more upbeat and a bit more.
Yeah, there was a change of mentality this weekend, I think.
Yeah, and there was even a change of, there was almost an acknowledgement that the Pedro Acosta way of riding the bike has needed to change and needs to change. We saw him going with the kind of the underseat package on both of his bikes, which, the other KTMs have been running now for the last race or two. And he was also talking about how he needed to change his riding style and become a little bit more high corner speed like Maverick, which shows that he's starting to understand, like, okay, maybe my way isn't the right way like he was at the start of the season. And yeah, for him to stay that close to Marc, Bezzecchi and Pecco throughout, what a track that really wouldn't or shouldn't be somewhere where he can do that,
well,
I thought
also
was really impressive.
He outshone the VR46 Ducatis. I mean, I think just to be inside the Ducati group, some riders, non-Italian manufacturer, Sharda, saying that's an achievement. But, I think you're right there, Neil. We saw a change in Pedro's approach this weekend. And Dave, we've been saying in a recent podcast that he needs to embrace all aspects of being a factory rider, not just like posting a result or having a winning bike. He has to work to bring the factory up to that position.
Exactly. A part of his responsibility is to develop a winning bike. And perhaps the reason for the change in attitude is that, or you would start to suspect that maybe the hoped transfer to a Ducati is no longer on the cards. Perhaps he has realised that he's stuck at KTM, so he might as well try and make the best of it.
I think he was asked in Spanish on Saturday, you seem a bit more upbeat, you seem like you're in a better mood. And he said, oh, have you noticed? And the kind of implication from that was that it's forced, it's being put on. But it's like he's been told, like, Pedro, sort yourself out here.
Yeah, because he was a miserable little git.
Yeah, because this is not the rider that we sort of came to love in the junior classes in last year.
And he reminded me too much of myself when I was about 15.
Oh goodness.
50, I think you mean.
But if you are Mardy, it comes across, and eventually people don't want to talk to you because then nobody just. It's not very inspiring, is it, from an elite athlete? So let's just put it that way. Let's move on to bless and banish. Dave, who will you be blessing? Who will be the recipient of your holy water?
My holy water is being sprinkled all over Marc Marquez because, I mean, he's going to be champion, isn't he? It was a brilliant performance at a track which is one of his weaker tracks, and he still managed to come away with 37 points, controlled the race just brilliantly, just really, really brilliantly. He only allowed people the chance to get close to him at places where they couldn't pass, and all the places where they could pass, no one was anyone near him. So yeah, I mean, this was a perfect weekend for Marc Marquez, a place where he should have left. He was not the fastest rider in both races, and yet he still won both of them. And his lead in the championship is now looking. I mean, it's not his fault. He didn't earn all of his lead in the championship, but the fact that Alex finds himself fighting for fifth and crashing out and breaking a bone in his hand, it's a sort of a sign on the wall. Mark might still crash out and break a bone, but he's more likely to crash out and break a bone while leading, making a stupid mistake from overconfidence, rather than being caught up in a battle that he really shouldn't be in.
I want you both to answer this question related from Idi Rian. In one sentence, he or she asks, have we ever seen the kind of domination Mark is showing in the post-500 era? Stoner, Rossi?
Yes, we have, from Rossi, Stoner, and Mark in his pre-injury days.
Jorge? Lorenzo?
Yeah, maybe not this not this level of domination from
not
Lorenzo.
Not this level.
But
Lorenzo was incredibly strong at some places, but not not week in, week out. This is the strongest that I think we've seen for a very long time. This is sort of like Rossi on the Honda. This is, I would say Stoner in 2007. Or perhaps Stoner in his second championship in 2011 on the Honda, when the bike was so much better than everyone else's. So yeah, this is what happens when you put the best rider in the world on the best bike in the world.
Neil, to who will you be bestowing the holy doctrine?
I'll be standing over a certain rider and touching both the shoulders and the forehead. That sounded quite wrong, actually. Sorry, but I will be doing that to Pedro Acosta for the reasons that we previously mentioned. Struggled here in the past, and we were coming in here thinking this is going to be a great track for Maverick Vinales. I mean, Vinales had a pretty good ride, but Acosta outperformed him, and doing so after a tough qualifying made it all the more impressive.
My blessing is going to go to Fabio Quartararo because it's been a couple of tough races for Yamaha. Again, it was this weekend. And at one point we were saying that Yamaha were the most fascinating manufacturer on the grid. They were extremely proactive. There was a lot going on. But now it just seems to be kind of messy. And is there a clear direction here? You almost get to the point where you think, lads, just bring the V4 in. If it blows up, it blows up. But the kind of motorcycle you've got at the moment and the issues that you're having, the best you can hope for is a pole position by your star rider going to 150%.
But their issues have got nothing to do with the engine layout and everything to do with the electronics and with the chassis and all the rest of it. And it doesn't matter what, but they could put a V76 in there and it would still they'd still be having issues. They have certain fundamental issues which they have to work on. I think that, they are making big progress. It's just that they're a very, very long way behind.
Can I just make a small sign of the cross as well for Samkiat Chantra, taking his first Grand Prix point, and also Aleix Espargaro kindly
moving out of the way.
Yeah.
And then Aleix said he moved out of the way, allowed Chantra through, and Chantra still managed to mess up the penultimate corner and nearly give that 15th place away.
Yeah, also, maybe we have to be less harsh. He's had arm pump surgery. He's a rookie, and he's on the toughest bike on the grid. You got to give him a bit more time. This is not like some theatrical element of MotoGP. The guy is trying to learn. He's trying to progress. Yeah,
but he just looks completely out of his depth. I went and watched trackside, and he was. He's still not shifting where he should be shifting. You can hear his gear changes sound different to everyone else's. They sound more like my gear changes, which is not good.
I wonder if he's ever dropped the Honda while having a disc lock on it.
I think he came too early. He should have been. He needed more time in Moto2. He was a really good Moto2 rider. He's a much better rider.
More than 5 years?
Sorry?
What, more than 5 years?
Well, apparently, yeah.
No, he's a shining example of someone who doesn't pass up the opportunity to ride a MotoGP bike.
No,
that's
yes.
it. There can't be much ambition there. Just let me be part of the show, guys.
Yeah, exactly. But it would be nice if he was faster, if he learned faster.
Continuing the Yamaha theme, my banish category, I'm going to excommunicate Alex Rins. I know he's been very limited by the tools that he has, but how about this for a set of results that are truly uninspiring? Alex Rins' finishes this season are 17, 11, 11, 12, 13, 12, 13, 11, 15, and 13.
I'd almost slipped into a coma with you just reading that sequence of results.
So someone even said to me today, why don't Yamaha just sack off 3 riders? Because we know the Prima Pramac situation with Miguel Oliveira and Jack Miller, but it seems that Alex Rins is also falling into the category now of hit the reset button, guys.
Yeah. What have they got to lose?
Yeah, Neil, who's kind of on the dark side for you?
I will be banishing Pecco Bagnaia to the depths of panic. Yeah. I mean,
he's in love with Bez now.
Exactly. I've already got one fancy from the academy. I mean, sort of for the reasons we mentioned, great track for him. Had decent potential through the weekend, just didn't really show it. And it was the same old issues with the sprint. And just not really able to show that kind of aggression in Sunday. So it was pretty uninspiring from Pecco.
Dave,
I disagree. I mean, okay. I sort of get Neil's point, but I think he's being unnecessarily harsh. But it's his choice if he wants to make those life choices.
So, who is your Satan worshipper?
My the one that I'm sending off to the hands of Beelzebub is Jorge Martin. Some might say he's already in the hands of Beelzebub because they are losing
himself.
They are losing the PR battle so badly. Because it does seem like every time it kicks up, the whole situation kicks off. Then Bez is on the podium. The Raul Fernandez. We haven't mentioned Raul Fernandez. He's catching fire, lads. He's
second highest finish of the season.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. 8th, and he just he had a difficult weekend, but he made progress. He really, really made progress throughout the weekend, and I think that speaks well. I mean, it speaks well of him. It's exactly what he needed to do, but it also shows that the Aprilia has something. There is something there. It's a competitive bike, and for Martin, it's becoming increasingly less clear why Martin would want to leave, unless it's just for the money. I mean, if it's just for the money, fine, whatever. But yeah, and he keeps on losing these PR battles. Albert Ferreira keeps on losing these PR battles, and I think that it's bad for him. He doesn't deserve that. I think some of our Patreons in their questions were pretty much all of them were prefaced with, "I used to really like Martin, but I'm starting to think." It really feels like Martin is on the losing side of this argument, and it needs to be settled as quickly as possible. Really, what Martin needs to do is just knuckle down, get on the bike, ride it, show Aprilia that it's bad, or show himself that it's good. But he needs to sort of shut up and ride. And we might see him at either at the Saxon Ring or at Brno.
It's going to be a divorce and it's going to be weird. So let's see how this one plays out. Neil, last time on the show, some of the listeners were a bit judgmental of your grades for the Grand Prix. Are you taking this in mind when you're awarding your marks for the Dutch TT?
I'll double down on those Mugello grades. It definitely was a 6 out of 10 weekend.
You're a hard man to please.
I was going back and reviewing, thinking, was I too harsh? But no, it was a 6 out of 10 weekend.
No, you were. No way were you too harsh. Our viewers are wrong.
Yeah, exactly, because Ducati domination, Marquez 1-2. Yeah, at least here this weekend we had a little bit of variety up there. We had an Aprilia up there. We had KTM up there in the hands of Acosta.
We had a Quartararo on pole.
We had a fight that was going all the way, kind of all the way up until the last couple of laps. At least there was a kind of sense of jeopardy that the result might not end up being another Marquez win. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay. Dave?
I am going to give it an 8 out of 10, but probably at least one, probably maybe 2 points of that are just for the event. It was just a fantastic event. It was a special event for a special occasion. The only no, that's not true. There's only one other motorcycle racing event that's been going on longer than 100 years, and that's the Alaman TT. So they
the real TT.
I thought this was the real TT.
This is also a TT. But I mean, they celebrated it in style. The racing was pretty good. It was tense. It wasn't thrilling, but it was tense. It did feel like things could happen. The crowd were fantastic. Even the pre-race show was completely bizarre, but really quite special. All of those bikes riding around. You know, like the racing. I would give the racing maybe 6 or 7 out of 10. But it deserves extra marks just for the really
fireworks. Yeah, it was the fireworks, right?
It was the fireworks.
They drove it
All
up
right,
to 10.
it was the fireworks.
Yeah.
I'll say an 8 as well. Fantastic place. Like you say, I mean, I even enjoyed taking a walk on Saturday out right onto the infield. The second best lawns in MotoGP behind Silverstone. And, you know, it's just
do you know what
so
Silverstone?
quaint.
Yes, you know what Silverstone could use? They could use some of those earth banks around there. This is the one thing that people complain about Silverstone. Oh, there's nowhere for the fans to sit. You're right, there is nowhere. What they need to do is to take a leaf out of the book of Assen, build earth banks all around the outside of the circuit for the fans. Because once you're up sort of 4 or 5 meters, you can actually see a long way over the track. It feels it encloses the track. It gives it a much more sort of cozy and sort of welcoming atmosphere. It feels much better. But yeah, I mean, it's such a wonderful place to walk around.
It also means you can, you know, accumulate your beer cans just by gently rolling them down the slope towards the back of the
It makes
fence.
everyone's job easier.
But I just to quickly add on to that, after Le Mans, Mugello, you know, Jerez, you know, this was another atmospheric round. I would say the sport is in rude health in terms of fans anticipating something. We could argue about the racing and how much of a spectacle it is this year, but you know, I still think MotoGP is delivering, and people are still motivated to come and buy tickets for it. The only grumble I would have is how much the hotels around this area decide to hike the prices, because some of them are extortionate. But I guess that just comes with having the biggest event of the year once a year come to town.
I want to give a quick shout out to a couple of our patrons. Well, more than a couple, actually. Graham Barton, Nick Sabin, Michael Cassie, Adam Cole, and Janice Clayton all predicted correctly that there would be a Marc Marquez double victory here. Also, Janice, Hayden Forever, and Aaron Land predicted that Bez would be the closest to challenge the Ducatis up front. We also had a pretty fun category where we asked what is going to be Dave's one-off home race helmet design. DJ Purchase said it's going to be Twitter replies to idiots. Michael Curry said it's going to be Adam's profile on one side and Neil's on the other.
Oh, that would be quite
And Hayden Forever said it's going to be a big dripping tiramisu with a record cumulative 3-day attendance plastered all over the back.
Actually,
which one was it, Dave?
It wasn't any of those. It was actually TV Room Raccoon got closest, because she said she said Dave is a wife guy, guilty as charged, and very proudly so. He will have a tribute to his wife on his helmet. Now, I don't. I mean, I love my helmet. I got it from 6D. It's fantastic. It's the most comfortable helmet I've got. Works really, really well. What I do have is my motorbike is
very red.
It's a one-off livery. It's got roses all over it, because my wife's name is Roosje, which is Dutch for rose, and so yes, that's pretty much so. It was not my one-off helmet wasn't a tribute to my wife. My permanent motorbike is a tribute to my wife.
Well, that's it from Assen. We're going to pack up and go. It's been a double header. It's been an exhausting 2 weeks. The first of these series of double headers. Next one up is going to be Germany and Czech Republic. A big thanks to Renthal.com as well as Pole Position Travel. So don't forget to check out those websites. And we'll be back with another show next week. And we've got some more content coming up. Dave's got some interesting stuff on the technical side with Danny Aldridge, an interview. I also did an exclusive with Kelly Britton, the Global Marketing Director for Dorna, talking a little bit about Liberty Media and their incoming presence in MotoGP. So we'll have those up as soon as possible. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Bye.